All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling a really fascinating and, let's be honest, sometimes super frustrating puzzle: the connection between someone's confidence and their actual intelligence.
You've been there, right? You're in a discussion, maybe it's a full-blown argument, with somebody who is just so sure they're right. They're loud, they won't back down, but what they're saying, it just doesn't add up. It's totally baffling.
Well, it turns out it might be more than just a big ego talking. Psychology actually gives us a way to understand what's happening. It suggests this kind of thing could be tied to specific mental habits that are often linked to what we might call lower cognitive flexibility.
So let's start with the first group of habits. These all kind of fall under one big idea: inflexible thinking. We're talking about a mind that gets stuck in its own ways and just refuses to bend.
And specifically, we're going to look at three big ones. First, the famous Dunning-Kruger Effect, then a real lack of curiosity, and finally, this tendency to see everything in just black and white.
So let's kick things off with the Dunning-Kruger Effect. Now, this isn't just some pop psychology idea. It's a real, documented cognitive bias. What psychologists found is that in a bunch of different areas, from grammar to logic, the people who were the worst at something were also the least likely to know how bad they were. It's like their incompetence creates a blind spot. And this, right here, is the core of the whole paradox. They literally don't have enough knowledge on the subject to even see their own mistakes. The very skill they need to recognize their own shortcomings is the exact skill they're missing, so of course they speak with total certainty.
Okay, next up, a lack of curiosity. You know, real intelligence loves to ask why. It's all about being open to new info. But for some people, new ideas feel threatening. Learning something new might challenge what they think they already know, so they just stick with what's comfortable. They basically wall themselves off from growing. And hey, if you're not learning, it's pretty easy to think you've got it all figured out.
And that leads us perfectly into our third point, what psychologists call cognitive rigidity, or what we might call black and white thinking. Look, the world is messy and complicated, right? But a rigid mind really struggles with that. Everything has to be simple. It's either good or bad, right or wrong. There is absolutely no in-between, no gray area. And that inability to deal with nuance is a huge roadblock to solving pretty much any real-world problem.
All right, moving on to our second section. We're going to shift gears a little bit away from just pure thinking and into the world of emotional intelligence. This is all about that tiny little gap, or sometimes the lack of a gap, between having a feeling and acting on it.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. You can see the difference so clearly here. On one side, you've got that instant, knee-jerk reaction. Someone gets frustrated and it just explodes out. They get offended by everything. But on the other side, there's a pause. That little moment is everything. It's where the thinking happens. It is literally the difference between your emotions controlling you and you controlling your emotions. People often boil it down to this simple idea. Smart people pause, they think, and then they respond. Less flexible thinkers just react. And that pause, it's not a sign of weakness or hesitation. No way. It's a sign of real mental control. It's your emotional intelligence kicking into gear.
Okay, on to our third and final group of habits. This is where we get into that mindset that seems totally bulletproof against logic. You know, why some arguments just feel like you're talking to a brick wall.
And there are two big habits that really define this way of thinking. First, always playing the blame game. And second, just flat out refusing to even consider another point of view.
The psychology behind constantly blaming other people is this concept called an external locus of control. It's basically a worldview where you feel like you're just a passenger in your own life. Things happen to you. So if something goes wrong, hey, it's not my fault. It's bad luck, it's society, it's that other person. It's always something else. And we're not just talking about dodging blame for one little mistake. This is a pattern, a default setting. See, taking responsibility means you have to look at yourself. You have to problem solve. And that's hard work. It's so much easier cognitively to just point the finger somewhere else.
This comparison just hits the nail on the head. For one person, if you challenge their idea, you're challenging them. It's a personal attack. Their whole ego is on the line. But for another person, it's just a debate. It's an opportunity to test out an idea, maybe even learn something new. One mindset leads straight to defensiveness, while the other leads to growth.
All right, so we've gone through all these habits, but there's one last piece to this puzzle, and it's the thing that ties this all together. And to be honest, it's probably the most dangerous part of this whole thing.
So what is it? What's the real kicker here? After looking at all of this,
the overconfidence, the rigid thinking, the blame game. What is the scariest part of it all?
And there it is. That's the ultimate blind spot. The research suggests something really tough. The same mental limitations that cause all these habits also stop a person from ever seeing them in the first place. It's a closed loop. You don't have the self-awareness to realize you lack self-awareness.
Now let me be absolutely clear about this. This has nothing to do with what grade you got in school or how many degrees you have on the wall. You could have a PhD and still be a totally rigid thinker. This is all about how you think. It's about the mental habits that either open your mind to the world or slam it shut. So I'll just leave you with this final thought. The fact that you watched all of this, that you were curious enough to even explore these ideas and think about these different habits, what does that act of learning, that self-reflection, what does that say about you? Something to think about.